Welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. If you're going through a divorce, don't worry, you're not alone. This is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. Today, we're thrilled to have Jonathan Steele with us. Jonathan's legal career began with foundational roles at Nadler, Pritikin, and Mirabelli, and then he advanced to more specialized practice at Beermann LLP. He quickly rose from associate attorney to partner upon his admission to the Illinois bar, marking a significant milestone in his legal career. Recognized for his expertise in family law, he has been continuously acknowledged by Illinois Super Lawyers magazine as a rising star, a distinction reserved for less than 2.5% of attorneys under 40 in the state. Additionally, he's been named an emerging lawyer by Leading Lawyers magazine, an honor given to fewer than 2% of Illinois attorneys each year, recognizing those identified by their peers as top lawyers in Illinois. He also has a deep understanding of both the legal and technical aspects of cybersecurity and privacy, which is something that we see issues with a lot when it comes to managing money and divorce. So listen, if you're feeling overwhelmed by your divorce or your current station in life, please don't be. Jonathan is here to help us break it down so you can feel confident and prepared by creating a clearer picture of not only your financial situation, but how you can tackle some of the personal challenges that you might be facing. So grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, buckle up, and let's once again get you personally and financially empowered. Jonathan, it's so great to have you with us.
Jamie, thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate that introduction. I don't know if I deserve all those accolades, but it was a nice intro. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, you're killing it over there. So how did you get to be in this line of work? I mean, I know I have a lot of questions about high net worth divorce and the financial aspects of it and the cybersecurity and risk stuff. So there's more to come on this, but how much work do you do on the divorce side? Is this kind of an area of yours that you've been working on for a while? Tell me more about what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, as a lawyer, I've been in this field for about 12 years now, but this goes back as far as the age of 16. I started clerking when I was in high school. During the summers, I clerked all throughout college. I clerked through law school. And I just sort of latched on to the same boss and sort of rode with him when we merged into the new firm at Beermann. And here I am.
Yeah, man. Well, good for you. It's awesome to have people like you join us and be able to give us some advice from the legal side. We have a lot of people that we chat with that are professionals in the marriage and family therapy space. We have some financial professionals, but you're one of the few that we've had on so far that can help us with the legal aspects of things, because that is one area we try not to touch. I mean, we understand enough to get by helping people navigate the nuances of their divorce, but it can get really, really challenging on the legal side. So what are some of the things for the people that are listening that are dealing with not only high conflict, but high net worth divorce? What are some of the unique challenges that you face when or listeners would face if they're considering getting a divorce and they do have a lot at stake?
Finding an attorney that is experienced in dealing with high net worth is of paramount importance. There's no shortage, obviously, of divorce lawyers. Not all of them specialize in the high net worth arena. And if you stumble upon one that doesn't, and your spouse has one that does, you're going to be outmatched. You're probably going to be out-resourced. And so you do well to do some research beyond just Google what's a good divorce lawyer. So that first step is a very important one.
What are some of the questions that people should be asking if they're interviewing an attorney?
Well, I think, how big is your staff? How big is the attorney force? If you go on vacation, is there another lawyer here that is going to cover for you? Are you the one that's going to be trying my case, or are you going to pass this off to an associate? What's your preferred method of communicating? Because I don't want to be emailing you if you're a telephone lawyer, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. How many cases have you taken to trial? Do you lean more towards alternative dispute resolution as opposed to litigation? All of those will give you a feel for, is this lawyer a good fit? And then, you're going to want a lawyer that is capable of litigation. Always the goal is to try to settle out of court, but to be able to do that, you need a lawyer that can back it up if it doesn't go that route and it has to go to a trial.
That was going to be my next question is, And maybe this is, I guess it's a two-part question. Do you prefer litigation or do you prefer mediation? And whatever direction, whatever answer you give me there is totally fine. But are there any things that people need to consider and try to go the mediation route? Or like in my own personal case, we went right to litigation. There was no chance we were going to be able to mediate. It was just that type of divorce. So maybe give me some thoughts around that. I mean, do you have a preference? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a litigator. There's plenty of lawyers here at the firm that do mediation, and once in a while I will do a mediation. It's not always beneficial over lawyers that just write letters. Sometimes a mediator does what's called just shuttle diplomacy, and they just pass offers back and forth, which you can maybe do without the mediator. But then there are times when mediation's great, and it helps to streamline things. It helps to get things done faster and less expensive. And you just to have an effective mediation, you need buy-in on both sides. You can't have someone that's being dragged into mediation that doesn't want to be there and expect it to be productive. And you also need both sides to be on equal footing. If one of the parties is a lawyer and the other one is a stay-at-home dad or a housewife, the other person's just not going to feel, on equal footing to negotiate. There's a power imbalance, and so it's probably not going to be successful. Anytime you've got like domestic violence or abuse issues, it's probably not going to be successful. So some cases just start off on an acrimonious tone, and those are hard to mediate.
I could see that. We do. I've started doing mediation over the course of the last couple of years, and I tell people all the time that come to us and they want to try the mediation route. Like, our first question is, well, how amicable is it? Is this going to be something that we're actually going to be able to mediate? And like you said, are we on level footing? Because if there's an income disparity, if there's education disparity, if there's just disparity in general, and there's a lot of infighting going on and so on, you may as well just go right, head right to the courthouse, because this is going to be a failed mediation anyway. So we try not to do. We definitely don't take on cases where we think that's going to be the case, right? And we rely on you as the attorney to be able to help us with the litigation piece of it. So what are some of the financial decisions that people need to make that you can help support them in as it relates to their divorce?
We help them navigate through the whole process financially. It seems like a complicated and time-consuming process. Some divorces can last 5-6 years on the long end, but it really boils down to simple steps. You are identifying assets, you're valuing them, and you're distributing them. Where it gets more complicated is where you're valuing like a closely held corporation, or you're valuing IP rights, or some sort of non-arm's length transactions where it's a family business. So, things like that can complicate things. Non-marital tracing can complicate things. If you have a long-term marriage and you have to try to sort out, yes, it was bought during the marriage, and you're trying to trace it back to a non-marital source and you don't have a prenup, that can make things more complicated. But if you're right at the outset of your divorce, high net worth or not, one way you can just try to help streamline everything and make things faster and less expensive is to organize yourself. So you're going to be asked at some point for your tax returns. You're going to be asked for your bank statements and your credit card statements. And if you could just spoon feed that to your lawyer right off the bat, you're going to cut out so much of the fighting, so much of the back and forth, and so much of the attorney's fees that could be wasted on doing that process.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And that's the one thing that I see happen all the time. And in kind of going back to what you said earlier, the attorney fees component of it, and that's where we try to help I think that's where the real value of working with someone like myself, a financial professional, a CDFA, that can help people with the financial nuances of the divorce, because not everybody's as polished as you are and has the experience that you do. Some of these attorneys that we're working with, they don't, they put together these rudimentary spreadsheets. They don't understand, the after-tax value of assets. They don't understand how to divide the assets, so on and so forth. So that's where I think, us coming in can help. And then to your point about keeping the fees lower, if you can, like you said, if you can spoon feed this information to your attorney, you get it nice, neat, organized, and get it to you as the attorney, and you can spend less time thumbing through documents and bank records and all that stuff. I mean, you're gonna save yourself a ton of money. And that's again where folks like me can come in, and our team can come in and help people do all that work, because we have one case right now, for example, we have 1,200 pages of discovery that we're going to be able to drill down and summarize, so to speak, into a 2 or 3 page balance sheet that you as the attorney can then take and run with for the negotiations.
I think another thing to keep in mind also is just that, you mentioned that some of the lawyers you deal with, you didn't use this phrase, but I will. Sometimes they're bush league. Sometimes they're inexperienced. They don't do divorce law. And some clients come in and they get concerned because their spouse has a good lawyer. I always try to clear up that misconception. If your spouse has a good lawyer, that's a good thing. You don't need to be afraid of that, because that means that you're operating on the same set of facts, you're operating using the same set of laws, and you're not trying to teach a rookie lawyer on your dime about divorce. So don't be afraid of, there's a good lawyer on the other side. That's just a very common misconception, and it actually helps to streamline things and make it less expensive and faster, and it's a good thing.
That's awesome. That's really, really good advice. I have not heard another attorney say that. What about things like the digital assets that people have in their divorce? And you alluded to some, maybe touched upon this in an earlier comment earlier, but we deal with the things, a lot of digital assets and cryptocurrency and things of that nature. Some of this all being new to the world of finance. So how are you handling those types of things? And maybe what are some of the things that our listeners need to consider relative to digital assets and so on, and maybe even some of the risks that are associated with them in the divorce?
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar process to the categories that I gave you earlier. You're identifying the assets, you're valuing them, and you're distributing them. It just, for older lawyers that don't really understand cryptocurrency or an asset like a domain name that may have some goodwill associated with it, they may not really understand how to effectuate a split, how to effectuate a valuation of it, or really where to start in trying to find cryptocurrency if somebody's not disclosing it. So I don't want to say hire the youngest lawyer you can find, but just hire somebody that's experienced or knows well enough to know what they don't know, and to lean on a professional that knows how to find cryptocurrency. It can be a tricky thing to do. Certain cryptocurrencies are harder than others to trace, but they all, at the end of the day, they come back to a source of funds that come from a bank at some point. So you follow the money. Where it gets a little bit less clear-cut is when you're trying to divide up a digital asset that is hard to value. If I want all of our family photos that are on a shared iCloud drive or something like that, and your spouse is just being recalcitrant and making it difficult for you, those fights actually end up being harder to resolve than valuing cryptocurrency, finding cryptocurrency, dividing cryptocurrency, or doing any of that with a domain name as well. So it's a similar process. It's just a different kind of asset.
One of the things that people come to us a lot and mention a lot when we have these initial conversations with them is they either think we do the work of a forensic accountant, or they say, I want to hire you and a forensic accountant. Can we talk a little bit about the role of a forensic accountant in this whole process, and when you think a good time to maybe hire one is, and maybe a time where we don't necessarily need that person to be involved? Because I know they're not cheap.
They're not cheap. Sometimes it makes sense to hire one, and sometimes what they do can be done by a paralegal at a law firm. So it really just sort of depends on the case. I actually deposed a forensic accountant a couple hours ago, and it made sense in that case to have one. If you are, for instance, a case where it makes sense is if one of the employers or one of the businesses that's owned by one of the spouses is at least alleged to be a very cash-heavy business. Sometimes it's hard to put a value on that because they don't have a lot of assets. They're not declaring a lot of income. And so you would hire a forensic accountant to come in and try to say, here's the cash, and go through their books and go through their expenses and just try to make a case to a judge that their deposits don't line up, that there has to be cash, and try to do as best you can at tracing it and showing just how much cash there is coming in. So there's a lot of those cases where somebody will come in and they'll say, I know that my spouse is declaring X, but they really make Y, and prove it. And as a lawyer, you need more than just to be able to say, we think that. You really have to show it. And so some of that ends up being outside the expertise of a paralegal. And that's where forensic accountants can be of value.
What are some of the things that are considered income if you're a business owner that you're looking for specifically?
All of your revenue. Like where I've used one recently was an Italian restaurant where it was mostly pizza deliveries, and there was alleged to be a ton of cash. And so it made sense to bring in a forensic accountant so that we could put a real value on it. Because if we just went off of their book, the value was going to be nothing. And so we really needed someone to come in and tie that up and say, yeah, they say that they're making $50,000, but their expenses are $250,000. So that doesn't make any sense. And here's the percentage of cash tips. Here's the percentage of cash transactions in the actual restaurant. So that would be one example.
Got it. There's a lot of add backs, right? When we start going through the financials, there's a lot of add backs for income. That's for sure. We work with a lot of business owners, and that seems to always be, from a business perspective. As a business owner myself, in some respects, it's better to show you have fewer lower revenue in the eyes of the IRS. That way you can manage taxes that way, and as long as you're doing everything on the up and up, have at it. As far as I'm concerned. But when people, I've seen a case. We had a case. You would have laughed at this one. I think the gentleman was putting the kids' orthodontics on the business as a business expense and a variety of other things. But that was the one thing that came to mind as we were talking about this, to reduce the expenses of the business. And then it basically showed that he was piss poor when you realize that. When you add all these other things back, the company's doing relatively well.
You see that a lot with self-employed business owners. They think that they're clever. They think that this hasn't been tried before, where you just run all of your personal expenses through the business and you manipulate your personal income and say that it's low. And when you start to look at, well, why is the company paying your personal credit card? What are the transactions that it's covering? Why is it paying your travel? Why is it paying your lease for your car? Why is it paying your insurance? Why is it paying your lawyer for your divorce case? All of those things then get added back into your personal income, because those are personal expenses that should not be run through your business. I had a case like this recently where a judge said to me that he thinks that as judges, they should be mandated reporters to the IRS, and all of those kinds of cases and hearings would stop, that lawyers wouldn't put on those kind of hearings anymore if they knew that judges, when they saw a personal charge on a business account, had to report it. And he's probably right. I bet that would stop real fast.
I would concur. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's hidden. And then there's people like myself who run a legit business, and we do every once in a while I'll go out to lunch or something like that and feed myself if I'm off running errands for work. But we're not taking the family out to dinner and calling it a business expense like some folks do. So sticking, I had a thought, and like I told you, Jonathan, it was going to happen. The thought I had was to piggyback on your amazing comment there. Now it's totally gone, so we'll come back to it if it ever comes back to my brain here. But I know you have some pretty sizable experience in cybersecurity and managing risk and that type of stuff as well. So are there any considerations, especially in this day and age with technology and AI and all the other stuff that is out there that is well over my head, anything pertaining to those types of things that we need to consider relative to divorce that our listeners need to hear? Yeah.
If you're just starting out your case, or even if you're hearing this and you're in the middle of your case, I know that what I'm about to say is tantamount to asking you to give up a limb, but maybe get off of social media until your case is over. It's hard to do. It's a real hard sell to every client I suggest it to, but more and more you see tweets, you see Instagram posts and Facebook posts and pictures coming into evidence and biting someone in the butt. And the uses of them vary wildly. Sometimes they're in an order protection case. Sometimes you're trying to say that when one parent has parenting time, they are out drinking, and so you're proving that up through pictures at a bar on Instagram that you've posted. Sometimes you're trying to show that one of the spouses is cohabitating and that they shouldn't be a maintenance or an alimony recipient, and so you're showing them on vacation or posting pictures on date night with their new boyfriend or girlfriend, or that they're dissipating marital assets by dating and spending money on an extramarital affair. you name it. And it's information that you're just basically feeding to your spouse by posting it on social media. And you may think, oh, well, I unfriended my spouse. Well, maybe you did, but did you unfriend everybody that might feed that information to your spouse? Did you unfriend your kids who might be bribed by your spouse to give them information? Probably not. And so unless you really have a real firm grasp on who has visibility of all the things you're posting, be wary of what it is that you're posting, because you are just offering a bunch of information that is going to end up getting used against you in your divorce case.
The last thing you want are your mean tweets about your ex-spouse or your text messages, when you're going off the rails on a projector screen in the middle of a courtroom, right?
Those are one thing. And it's, I've seen somebody lose maintenance that was a maintenance, and maybe it as alimony, a maintenance candidate. They were entitled to significant maintenance, but because we showed that they were all over Facebook dating and living with someone, they lost their right to it. And I bet they wish they could unpublish those Facebook posts, but once you put them out there, they're out there. Good luck taking them back. Good luck saying that's not me on my own account. So yeah, it's something to tread lightly. If you can't get off, then to just try to prune your follower list or your friend list and make sure that everybody on there is on your side.
Yeah. And you made the point about the kids too. That's, there's some level of parental alienation that could go on when you're posting some things and your kids can see it.
For sure. And, if you're putting them in the middle to try to recruit evidence for you against the other parent, you're putting them in a tough spot, but it happens. It's easy to think selfishly and not necessarily prioritize your child there. And it's almost never going to be the case where you think, I need to unfriend my child on Facebook or on Instagram. But you have to look out for yourself. You really just have to be careful about what you're putting out there. There's also Instagram is better about this now, but some platforms, when you upload a photo, it has metadata on it. It says when it was uploaded, where it was uploaded from, where it was taken. And so if somebody is fairly savvy with computers, all of a sudden they have a picture of your life. They know where you were, when you were there, who you were there with, your GPS coordinates. And it gives a lot of information about you that also jeopardizes your physical security. So there are strategies to mitigate that. You can get rid of the metadata. You can change the metadata. If you're on vacation and you're posting photos in real time, anybody that's looking at your feed knows, well, your home is probably empty right now. So maybe wait until you get home to upload a big batch of your vacation photos. I think your followers can wait a week to see all of your poolside pictures if it means, your home's safe. Yeah. So, little things, I think it can go a long way.
Yeah, cybersecurity and exposing yourself to that level of risk, is certainly something we want to try to do whatever we can to protect ourselves from. Thinking about the protection component of this, one of the things that we work with a lot of our clients on through the divorce process, and mostly towards the tail end, is insurance and estate planning. So what are some of your thoughts on those two items pertaining to the cases that you've seen? And I guess in this case, in particular, relative to, the high net worth type of cases, who have really, a lot of things that they need to protect.
Life insurance is a pretty critical component of a lot of high net worth cases. Some people come in and they already have a whole life policy, which basically just means there's a cash value associated with it. But you can get a term policy for relatively cheap. There's no cash value associated with it, but it provides a death benefit that secures your child support obligations or your maintenance obligations. So trying to buy affordable life insurance is an important component. But in the ultra high net worth cases where you've got 10, 20, $30 million in the bank, maybe life insurance isn't even necessary, because if you pass away and you still owe child support or maintenance, there's another pot to get it from. It's more so for that middle income range or middle asset range, where there's just not a big enough pot of money to fulfill your obligations to your spouse and to your child in the event you die before you've paid them off.
Good advice. I'm a big proponent of estate planning and life insurance, especially when assets are involved and support is involved, to make sure that if heaven forbid something happens to that person paying support, if they get hit by the proverbial beer truck, tomorrow, you want to make sure that you're getting your fair shake and getting what's rightfully due you. So amazing advice. Any questions I didn't ask you that I should have asked in this particular conversation?
No, but in what you just said, you reminded me of the second component of your question, which was estate planning. And that too is, it's a vital aspect of pre, mid, and post-divorce. If you have a trust set up, you're avoiding probate, you're protecting your privacy a little bit, you're ensuring that your desires about how your money is handled after your death are carried out. You're avoiding a fight in probate court. There are ways of protecting your privacy and your physical safety by using a trust. One trust that I recommend to people all the time is a land trust. It's very easy to hop on Google, type someone's name and say home address, and then you can pay $1 or $2 to a data broker, and all of a sudden their home address. You can pull up their mortgage from the recorder of deeds. You can find out, who their relatives are, what their email address is, what their phone numbers are, and all of that's dangerous. If you don't want that to just be so readily accessible, you can put your home in a land trust, and then the trust itself holds title. The mortgage is in the name of the land trust. And so if somebody goes to the recorder of deeds and they search your name, they're not going to find anything, because technically your home is owned by trust number 477515, and you just happen to be the beneficial or the beneficiary of that land trust. So that extra shield offers some anonymity that goes a long way in protecting your privacy and in your personal security. So there's a number of tools at your disposal that, it sounds like it's only for the ultra high net worth. It sounds like it would be complicated and very expensive to set up a trust or a land trust. And it isn't. It's a gradient. There's lawyers that can do it for not very much money, but it's always worth it. So whether it's a will you're setting up, whether it's a trust, nobody wants to think about their death, but death is inevitable. So it's something you have to plan for. You've got to put some forethought into, and it's for your own benefit. It's for your kids' benefit and all of your family at the same time. So definitely something that's worth putting some thought into.
What about trust for minors? How do you handle if you have a 5-year-old or, a 10-year-old, then you're going through a divorce and you go to set these, you want to set up a trust to be able to protect them in the event of your, untimely demise. How does that all work?
There's a couple different routes you can take. You can set up a normal trust voluntarily, where you say the corpus of the trust or the money that you're putting into it is for the benefit of this child, and here it's subject to the following terms. And the trustee that I'm appointing, whether it be somebody or a financial institution, they have a fiduciary obligation to administer the trust, to pay out in the terms that you set forth. And if you have a child that is not particularly responsible with money, maybe you don't want to hand them $5 million and let them just blow it all right when they get it. And so you can set up a trust where you say, here's $5 million, but you get $100,000 a year, other than if you happen to have like a medical issue, or you need it for school, or you need it for X, Y, or Z, then you can sort of carve out exceptions to that annual distribution limit for certain things that you deem appropriate. So you've got some granular control over the asset and what you're passing on beyond just a blank check if you're giving it to them in a trust. The other kind of trusts that sometimes get used in divorces are less voluntary. They're called child support trusts. And where you see that is more if you have somebody that owes child support and they have a history of non-payment. Sometimes a judge will say, I'm going to take a big chunk of money and I'm going to put it into a trust. And rather than relying on you to make a payment every month the trust is going to cut a check for the child support. So you just take out the chase, you take out the contempt proceedings and having to fight over the money, because it's just one fight and it's automated distributions out of that trust. So those get used. It's a good tool to keep in mind if you are the recipient of child support and you're just continually having to chase the payor, because it's one fight as opposed to every month fighting. So
very nice. Very nice. That's amazing advice. Jonathan, how can people get in touch with you? State of Illinois, right? So if you're in the state of Illinois and you're listening to this and they need help how do people get in touch with you to try to work with you?
Yeah, I do practice primarily in the state of Illinois. I have tried some cases in other states, which we're permitted to do on a case-by-case basis. So don't let the geographic location necessarily be a barrier to reaching out. And certainly if I can't help you, I'll let you know. But if I can, I'm happy to do it. And if I can point you in the right direction, I'm happy to do that also. You can reach me at my email address, jsteele@beermannlaw.com, BEERMANN law. Or you can just look at our firm website. There's, my firm bio. It's got all my contact information. That's beermannlaw.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for carving out some time to chat with us. And if you're listening and you want to connect with Jonathan, don't pull over on the side of the road to jot that information down. All of his contact information is going to be in the show notes. We'll make sure we share that on social media for you and so on. So I appreciate your time again today, man. It was a great conversation. Thanks for giving us so much amazing information from the legal side. We have a lot of information coming from other professionals along the way, but this is super, super helpful. And I learned a ton in our conversation. So listeners, don't hesitate to reach out to Jonathan if you need help. You can also visit our website at allegiantds.com for more information on the services we provide. And we also provide complimentary conversations to help triage you, figure out where, help you understand, what your options are, put you in touch with people like Jonathan along the way. So we are here to help as well. Jonathan, were you going to say something there just before I cut you off?
I was just going to thank you for having me on your show. It was a pleasure.
All right, man. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day.
You as well.